him being hit, or did he instigate it?
No, I didn't
Because
even
the way
notice
the
that.
story the way the story is structured, it's coming across to me as the officer was doing his job and issuing a ticket for not wearing a
Yeah.
seatbelt and playing loud music, and he didn't want the ticket, exited the bus, shot the police
Correct.
officer. And to me, if that is the case, according to the story here, then was the officer responding to being hit by a civilian? Does
So
that
this is
change
so
the
all
story?
of this, because you're posing the questions, then this is why I am putting it in this case back on the police to come out and say something about it
No,
from their standpoint.
he can, the person who was charged, I believe that he can also file a complaint against the police if he feels that injustice was being served against him. He didn't like what happened, it's unlawful. He could file a complaint, go to the complaints department, which they let me not this morning because let me not. Um, there are certain things that he can do to try to get some resolve in this matter. Do you really? I don't know if the expectation is because if the story is coming across as the police officer was also defending himself, do you think that the police would go ahead and reprimand an officer who's defending himself against a civilian?
So all of this goes back to
But
me to public relations, and maybe just the public being
no,
aware or being told um, what happened, and
listen,
maybe what probably should have happened. Yes or no? I can't say at this time, but I think as it goes back, because both of you now have different opinions on the same matter, right? So in order to clarify it, then this is where the public relations from the police department needs to step in, because you're going to have these two different arguments occurring within society based on this one incident.
I mean, all they really have to say is investigations are being that what they normally say. They've
listen.
said
Yeah,
it
but that's
before.
brushing it aside
What
in,
I'm
Yeah,
in a
not
saying,
moving way,
necessarily because they
unless
cannot say much if it's something
if
that's
it's
before the
pending.
court.
yeah,
Again, they can't say much about it.
but what I'm saying is, whether or not the officer was carrying out his duty, issuing the ticket, the guy attacked him, whether or not that is the process what it happened. I said, whether the guys are right or wrong, they're going through the due process, he's been charged, whether they're guilty or not, that's up to the code, that's up to the facts of what happened. My issue is the police are supposed to be trained to deal with this situation. Because if the police is reactive and our justification is, oh, he was reacting to the guy pushing him. If the police officers are reactive, when would it end? This time we saw the police punching a man who was not fighting with him. What happens to another time where police loses his temper? And we've seen it in the past. We haven't heard about it in years. We've seen it in the past where they took out their batons and they used to beat the life out of people. What happens the day when a police officer loses his temper and draws his firearm? What happens then? They are trained
Happens.
to what would happen? What would happen? They are trained to de-escalate situations. He was supposed to defuse that situation. There was a point, the same argument I had when the guy hit the woman with the cutlass. He had time to stop himself from hitting her. Then he had time again to stop her from hitting her the second blow. This officer was in the fight with this man, and the other one standing on the side. He turned around and punched him in the face. That could never be right. So if this guy wants to press charges, I think he should.
Two wrongs don't make a right. Hopefully, they get to the bottom of the entire situation and who's to be in the end of everything. Hopefully, they resolve it.
Hopefully.
But it is never a good look to have
on both sides.
on both sides.
On both sides,
Right.
especially with the way these minivans are, these minivan operators are on the road.
A lot of issues in this thing, but it's never a good look. And you're right, officers are trained within the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force. The expectation of their responses, the way they react to certain situations, is much higher than the
Yes,
civilian.
it is much higher.
Um, in the same space, they're also human beings. So I would not be surprised by them acting out of their um perfect character per se, but they're trained, and hopefully going forward, I know unfortunately we might be seeing, but we have seen in the past, I think during carnival as well, there was another story of an officer letting off his firearm somewhere on the leeward side a few years ago, and that was also a big issue. But internally, they, no, let me not say normally, but the communication, and I've had this problem too. You're right. They don't, both of you, sorry. They may not always come out and say what has happened to that officer. But from what I've been told, there's can't remember the term they use, but they normally discipline the officers. They just don't
Internal
tell the
discipline,
public
right.
what has happened to that officer.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
and I think that should change because that's why there's a public relations
Yeah, because
You've
department.
seen one or two, but
when you look at even stories in the states, let's say of police brutality, shooting incident of an individual, in order to restore faith in some ways in the justice system, or so that persons know that things are being done, they tend to have a press briefing to say what has happened with that particular officer, whether that officer has been suspended or whatever the story is, right? So, as I said, in this case, because there is a divided opinion on this matter, not just between Crystal and Ariane, I guess maybe y'all represent a subset of society. Based on what the information coming out of it is, then I am going to throw this back onto the police to then say something about it. Yes, as Crystal's saying, they might placate it for now, or not necessarily placate it, because they will be truthful in saying that the matter is on the investigation. But we need to at least hear what has come out of it. Okay.
To Crystal's point, I think they also wait until the court proceedings are finished to see which direction it's
Which is
going
fair.
to decide
Which
if
is
they're
fair.
going to
by the time
discipline.
everybody forget,
Forget,
they
but
don't
Yes.
no,
need to.
but at least
But that's
still,
what happens.
They are
though.
but at
going to.
least still, we at least would hear that something has happened, whether or not we remember the incident accurately or correctly or remember it in full. The point is that something is going to be said, right? So people would know that, okay, so yes, they have had or they have done something to discipline internally.
And I want to make it clear, although I am disagreeing with the excessive force used, I am not saying that the guys should not have gotten a ticket. In that same story, such it has a video where I can't remember the name of the police officer, but he was saying that a lot of these are the number one cause of motor vehicle accidents in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are usually omnibus drivers, not even drinking, not even texting on your phone. Omnibus drivers, and we're both drivers, Relisa. We've seen it. We've all experienced it. You
Crystal,
also
you're
a driver,
driver?
Crystal?
I'm a driver.
Well,
I drive people crazy. I'm just kidding. But I drive foul.
but we've experienced them on the road. It's nonsense most of the time. The indicators don't work, and when I say don't work, that's in air quotes. They pull aside when they feel like they overtake crazy situations. Some of them really do deserve these tickets, but at no point will I ever agree that police officers should be using excessive force. The law determines that they should use necessary force. And in a situation where someone is not resisting you, one officer has him to decide, you have no right to go over and punch him in the face.
Okay, so we will all I don't think it's a matter of disagreeing, but we just all have several points of focus in it, and I don't think any of us are wrong. So let's wait and see what happens, and let this one to rest, because this will take us right up to 9:45, right?
Not really. I think we already
Yeah,
wrapped it
because
up.
remember we touched on it earlier this week
Yeah.
too.
So what's
Relisa.
next on the
All right.
agenda,
So,
Relisa?
so another interest that I said that wrong.
Yeah.
The story that was of interest. Yeah, boy,
Another
my brain and
interest
my
that was
mouth.
of
Yeah,
story.
Braining,
my
braining.
brain and my mouth sometimes, boy. Woo. All right. So another story that was of interest to me, I came across on St. Vincent Times. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the happiest of stories, but I am going to read it. Chateaubriand woman charged with 3 counts of child abandonment. Right, so I'm going to read the story wholesale. It's not very, very long. The police have arrested and charged Shanique Lavie, a 31-year-old domestic of Chateaubriand, with 3 counts of child abandonment. The charges that were laid on Sunday, September 24th, are as follows. Did you abandon a 9-year... What's happening here? Okay. Did you abandon 13-year-old student in a manner likely to cause unnecessary suffering or injury to his health? Did you abandon a 9-year-old student in a manner likely to cause unnecessary suffering or injury to his health? Did you abandon a 2-year-old infant in a manner likely to cause unnecessary suffering or injury to his health? The offenses were allegedly committed at Chateaubriand on September 18th at about 9 a.m. Lavie appeared at the family court on the 25th. She pleaded guilty. The matters were adjourned to October 30th for a social inquiry report. Now, the article continues by asking, what is child abandonment? Article 7 of the United Convention on the Rights of the Child clearly states that every child has the right to know and be cared for by his or her parents.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to focus on that part, parents, right? When a child is abandoned, this right is violated. Infants and young children are those most at risk of being abandoned. This is concerning as a child deprived of a stable upbringing in his or her early years of life may experience difficulties in terms of emotional and behavioral development. Despite the importance of understanding the extent, causes, and consequences of child abandonment, there is a distinct lack of research in this area.
Distinct lack of research
Research
here.
in this area.
Here?
Well, it just is in this
Okay.
area. But I guess no. I guess in this area means in cases of of the importance of a parent's life in early development of a child. Right?
Ay.
So the thing of it is that this story doesn't necessarily go into details, and maybe this may fall on the category of, would it, family court in a sense, where they may not necessarily
It's
divulge
family court.
the rest of the information, but the extent of what the child abandonment is in this case, like how long were the children abandoned? If to go further, what may have been the reasons for the mother be abandoning these children, right? So yes, we noticed that the mother was brought before the court.
And she pleaded guilty.
She pleaded guilty, right? And there was a reason why it says that I stopped at parents because
Thank you. Sorry.
a child has 2 parents, right? A mother and a father.
Mhm.
But there are many instances when stories related to children come out, a lot of focus is left on the mother. Now, yes, we have to acknowledge that single parenthood or single parent households have been in existence maybe since after slavery, before slavery, I'm not sure, right? But the point is that is it that should just the mother alone be brought before the court, or is it because the child was primarily in the custody of this mother, right? What are the reasons why a mother may abandon her children in this case? Do we look at the issues that affect not just the parent, but children who have been abandoned? And we see in a lot of instances where sometimes, and to go by extension, there are times when, I tend to say as a woman that not just because you are a woman means that you need to become a mother, right? You have to know within yourself whether or not you wish to take on that emotional and financial responsibility. Raising a child, and in a case, I'm going to talk to both men and women here because it takes 2 to bring a child into this world. You have to know within yourself whether or not you are ready to take on these responsibilities, because it's not just about you. It's what happens to this child when they're growing up. You see that there's an emotional detachment for some children towards their parents, because of the fact that, especially in single parent households, and I'm going to say mother in this case because you tend to have a significant proportion of society being single parent mothers. You see that detachment because mommy is so much more preoccupied and focused on being able to take care of the house, that we have somewhere to live, that we have food to eat, that she has money to send us to school. But there's that emotional detachment in that you don't see that type of connection. Um, and I think sometimes people just need to stop and think, especially young women. Traditional society expects that a woman, and you see it all the time, you hear it all the time. How you ain't have a child yet? You know, a woman gets a certain age, and the question is, why don't you have a child? Now, have you ever stopped to ask this woman? Yes, it can be for health reasons. So, number one, is actually isn't your business to ask the person the question in the first place, right? Because it could be for health reasons. But number two, suppose this woman has made a deliberate choice not to have a child because she knows that she isn't ready for it, ready to bring a child into this world based on all those other factors that I've explained. And abandoning a child, and notice the ages of the children, right?
Yeah.
You've abandoned these children. But I also want to know, was it a case where she was weighed down by this
That
responsibility
is
of being a
exactly what I
single
was going
parent?
to ask. Is there well, it's the problem with these family court issues is usually you can't really report on them. You're not
Right.
supposed to report on the names involved, but I really wish it had more of the case facts in this since she pleaded guilty.
I think normally sometimes in stories where it has not gone to like trial to a certain point, you don't hear a lot of
Everything.
the facts in the story. So you
Sometimes.
might have to wait. Sometimes you might have to wait
Yeah.
until
October 30th.
sometime after.
Yeah, that's when
But
it was adjourned to.
right, but she's 31. Her first child is 13. So she would have had that child when she was 18 or 17. Question: did she finish tertiary level education? Did she equip herself with the necessary tools and skills to get a proper job? Is she working at this time? Did she fall prey? So many questions right now. Did she fall prey to the, okay, I don't have a job at this time. I have to drop out of school. I can't go to college anymore. I can't work because I now have to take care of my first child. This is overwhelming. It's burdensome. I wasn't ready for this. The father is not taking care of the child. Is it that these children are fathered by one person, two, or three? Did she fall into the bracket of the woman who has one child? She's not financially capable of taking care of herself and the child, and the father is not taking care of them. So she gets into another relationship and she gets another child for the second person, and the same
Hoping
cycle
that
starts.
second person stays to take care of the first child and her, and
And then she gets a second child, and then she ends up in third. We don't know the situation that she is in, but this is something that I don't want to say is common, but we've heard it before, and it actually happens. And many times people ask, why don't you stop having children? But if you're not living in a situation, you're not walking in that woman's shoe, it is easier said than done. When a woman or person is frustrated, they are extremely stressed out. These days, oh my gosh, you see the amount of money it needs to go to secondary school? $300 average
doesn't it start from
just to register.
preschool?
Exactly. And she has one in secondary school. There's a younger one and a 2-year-old, and that 2-year-old is probably in the terrible twos. So she's probably really frustrated. We don't know. I'm hoping in this situation we wait until the end before we pass
Pass
judgment.
Correct.
The first thing that crossed my mind is, will there be a psychiatric evaluation on this woman? Because immediately, me trying to be objective, when I read this story, I thought, what if the pressures of being a single parent or just being a parent, because we don't know the facts of the case. But is it that these pressures of having two children so far apart, 39 and 2, did it finally crack?
And
Did it finally make a crack?
it's interesting that you said that, Ari, because I'll be very honest. I don't know how single parents do it. Now, I came from a single parent household, and I want to believe that my mother had a lot of emotions from us when we were growing up,
So
right?
do I.
Because I can see, even so, my mother and I are co-parenting my niece. And I am saying that well, to a great extent, I'm not trying to say that my niece's mother is not in her life, but we have a greater hand in terms of co-parenting.
Mhm.
And I'm saying, just me alone trying to deal with my niece. I cannot be a single parent. I don't know what I would have done if my mother wasn't around.
Yeah.
You know, I think about it, and now being an adult in the situation, and I look back on it and I wonder, how did my mother do it? And this is why even my friends who are single parents, you know, I tell them, oh, we have like a village among us, because if somebody needs a break, if you need a break, you can reach out and ask for assistance, right? Because you can, and I'm not even
Sharing
trying
a
to use
lot.
the word loosely, but you can literally go crazy because
Sharing a lot.
you're not just trying to and the other thing for me is that
him alone and let him go about his merry way and fight.
All right, let's. One second. This.
Children and like fix yourself, take care of yourself, take care of your child.
But you know that's
Leaving the woman alone to take care of the child and the family is actually causing a ripple effect in breaking down the society, and he should be held accountable for that.
But saying to leave that man alone is easier said than done, especially when it comes down to an issue of finances.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I said
I know I would probably
even
want
though
to
that's
take,
that's my personal
yeah.
belief.
No, I agree with you. I would probably want to take that high road. But the thing of it is that when it comes down to my child looking at me in my face, hungry, and knowing that the father out there gallivanting and doing whatever he wants, possibly. No, I was
Karma,
something to
no.
vote.
Karma. I mean, so you take well, this is another conversation. You take him to court, you put yourself through this stress. And that's the rationale that I have. It is going to be stressful for me to put the man through court, taking up my time that I could be using to probably make some money or something. To force him to do what he should be doing.
I get
He
you.
should
I
be a
get
man.
you.
He has an apparatus that was used to bring a child. Be a man. Take care of your child and children. Please don't leave the woman, abandon the woman. When you abandon the woman, you're abandoning society. And then she faces a lot of backlash. Although some women will make some very poor choices and decisions, we should also exercise a bit of grace once she is exercising the same grace towards herself. There were some instances, sadly, where children have died because the mother cracked under frustration, or simply because the mother abandoned the child because she was not able to emotionally or financially take care of that
Oh,
child.
just because we've seen instances, because I remember there was a fire in Montrose. I can't remember if the child died or if the child was just injured due to had burn injuries. Can't remember exactly what that story was, but the mother went out looking for nice time, you know.
Yeah,
And
some women are wicked too,
yeah, and that's the thing, and I think it
Parents.
goes back
Parents wicked.
to goes back to what Crystal said, where especially if a woman has started making children very early, she feels as if she's missing out on life, just because she's had this responsibility from a very early age, but you yeah, it is difficult sometimes to speak on it because you have to be in that person's position as well. But this is why I also say sometimes it does take that village. Yes, she may have become a young mother. She may have become a mother at a very young age. No, it's not the grandmother's responsibility to take care of the children or to necessarily look after that child or children whenever the mother wants to go out and spree and that sort of thing. But every once in a while, maybe help to create a little bit of balance in that person's life, especially if you see the person is being responsible. There's responsible in terms of having a job, they're responsible with their finances, be there to support this young mother. And it's not taking fathers out of the picture, whether or not you are in a relationship with the mother. No matter what you feel about this woman, if you have a child, please provide for your child. There are so many instances where we see a child has grown up, the child has become successful in whatever regard, and the father beams with pride, knowing that they played no part in that child's early development. No part in that child's
Where are
life.
you going?
You have to also remember that you, as a father or parent, because there are mothers who do abandon their children as well, who play no role in the children's life, you have to remember that these children are going to grow up, and there will come a point in time when you're older, you may be looking to these children, the same ones who you had no active role in their life with. You want for these children to be a part of your life as you progress, as you age. So be mindful of all of these things, right? And
All right.
One word of advice.
yeah, what?
Condoms are free and next to cheap. If you know you're not ready for the responsibility, wrap it up or just leave it alone.
Yeah.
All right.
And even
All
for
those
a-
things that happen.
and
Things
even
happen in
for a
life.
woman, you yourself know what to do to not bring a child into this world.
Easier said than done
And-
though, but hey.
Yeah. No. If you see this, the 1 minute that you
I'm
don't
saying
the 1 minute that you don't stop and think is going to give you 18 plus years of
no,
a decision that you
listen.
did not stop and make. Right? So
1 second actually.
All right.
All right, this is Ari telling us
So
it's
the-
time for us to wrap up.
It's
all right?
now 9:45 and it's time for community dateline.
WEFM, the new fresh sound.